Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting into the weeds, undertaking a critical look at the digital systems behind patient diagnostics. We're dissecting the workflows, the procedures, and the technical architecture of a specific system called Novopath. It's used heavily in pathology reporting.
That's right. And we've got some fascinating source material here. We have the SOPs, the standard operating procedures.
Right.
Basically the rule book for staff.
Right.
And we're putting that right alongside a really sharp technical analysis. And this analysis, it doesn't pull any punches about the system's design flaws.
Okay.
So our goal really is to see how these things collide, the procedures, the clinical needs, the technical decisions, all in this very high-stakes environment. We want to unpack not just what the system makes people do, but why. Why does its current design cause these huge operational bottlenecks?
Bottlenecks. That sounds like a key theme here.
Absolutely. And these bottlenecks, they lead to an overall grade in our source analysis of, well, C.
Oof. C. That's not great for something this critical.
Not great at all. A C basically means, yeah, it works. Reports eventually get generated, but it's deeply inefficient. It's fragile.
So who is this deep dive really for?
Well, I think it's for anyone who's interested in that friction point, the clash between maybe older software design principles and what modern professionals actually need to be efficient.
Or maybe what happens when you have this fragmented system trying to serve something as precise as modern medicine.
Precisely. It's that fragmentation meeting precision diagnostics. That's the core tension.
Okay, so let's start right at the ground level. You mentioned the internal workflows, the SOPs. If you want to understand how software really works in practice...
You look at the manuals.
Exactly. You look at what people are forced to do. These documents, they show how Novopath pushes staff through these very specific, often kind of counterintuitive, multi-step processes for things that honestly should probably be simpler.
Yeah, it's like decoding the digital bureaucracy that's baked right into the software.
So this complexity you're talking about... It's not optional, right? It's mandatory.
Absolutely mandatory. It's hard-coded into how the system operates. Often, it feels like these manual steps are substituting for what should be automated logic in the background.
Okay, give us an example. What about something common, like adding a special stain? I think the source called it an SSP.
Yeah, an SSP, in-house histochemical stain. Super common, routine lab step. But in Novopath, ordering one correctly requires the user to perform 7 distinct mandatory interactions.
7 steps. Just to order a stain. That sounds exhausting already. What's step 1?
Step 1 is kind of setting the stage. It's a manual flag. The user has to type partial result text into the main results field.
Why? What does that do?
It's basically telling the system, hey, this report isn't finished yet. I've put some initial info in, but more results are coming from the lab. You're manually updating the system's state.
So the system doesn't know it's a partial report just because the case is open. You have to explicitly tell it.
Yeah.
You have to declare it. Exactly. Then step 2 is actually adding the SSP test itself. And this is where you see the interface issues starting.
How so?
Well, the analysis points out you've got 2 options. Neither is great. You can use a keyboard shortcut, ALT+I.
ALT+I. Okay, quick, but maybe not obvious.
Not at all obvious. Or you have to navigate through the menus.
Okay.
Go to tests, then click the 3 little dots icon.
Infamous 3 dots.
Right. Then select the source location for the stain, then finally pick the specific SSP you need, and then hit OK.
Wow. Okay. Let's just pause on that. That menu, tests, 3 dots, source, stain. Okay, that's a lot of clicks just to find something.
It really is.
And this choice, between a kind of obscure shortcut and digging through menus,
right,
that feels like a classic sign of maybe less than ideal UI design, doesn't it?
Absolutely. If the menu is that buried, the shortcut probably needs to be more intuitive. Or maybe the menu needs rethinking.
And we're only on step 2 of 7. We're nowhere near done. Step 3 is this mandatory verification loop. After you've selected the test, you have to scroll down within that test screen.
Okay.
And then this is the kicker. You often have to scroll right to actually see if the system added the test correctly.
Scroll right. Horizontally. In a modern application.
Yeah.
It's usually a design no-no. It means key info is hidden off-screen.
It hides the confirmation. And the confirmation itself isn't just a check mark. You have to click 2 specific proprietary icons. They only exist in Novopath. First, you click the beaker icon.
A beaker. Like a science beaker.
Exactly. And then you click the shield icon.
Okay, a beaker and a shield. What do they even mean?
Well, functionally, they're like manual switches. You're performing a state change. The beaker often seems to signify that the lab system, or maybe the lab itself, has acknowledged the request.
Right.
And the shield usually means the pathologist has verified or signed off on that specific order within Novopath's internal logic. It's like you're manually telling the system, yes, I meant to order this, and yes, the lab should see it.
So the software basically pushes all the responsibility for tracking the order status onto the user clicking these little pictures.
Completely. If you forget one click, maybe the downstream system rejects it, or maybe the lab just never sees the order pop up on their list. It's all on the user.
Okay, beaker, shield. What's next? We must be near the end of the 7 steps now.
Almost. The final action, step 7, is hitting the release button, sometimes called sign out. This is the gatekeeper.
What happens when you hit release?
That action pushes the SSP order info and that partial result text you entered way back in step 1 out of Novopath and into Antrim.
Antrim. That's the external system you mentioned.
Yeah, the kind of central hub. Antrim then routes the data to other places like health tracks or the client's own information systems, their PIMs.
So that whole 7-step dance is just to get an order for a stain from the pathologist's screen through Novopath and into the wider hospital or lab system.
Correct. And the pathologist is the human validator the whole way. Before they hit release, they have to mentally check, did I put partial result text? Are the beaker and shield icons green? Only then can they send it. Relying on someone's memory for 7 exact steps and 3 specific little pictures, well, that's just high friction.
High friction indeed. Okay, so that's ordering a new test. What about fixing something that's already been reported? Like correcting a case. The SOP for addenda and amendments.
Ah, yes. This workflow is maybe even more revealing because it highlights the integration problems, the fragmentation.
How so? Where does this one start?
It starts completely outside Novopath. Step 1, according to the SOP, is that the order for the correction itself has to be placed first in Antrim.
In Antrim, not by the pathologist.
Nope. By customer service or the lab QAC team. Lab QAC being the lab quality assurance folks.
Gotcha. So the pathologist identifies a need for a correction, but they can't initiate it in their main tool, Novopath. They have to ask someone else in a different system to kick things off.
Exactly. Talk about fragmentation. Only after Antrim gets that initial order does the case even show up in the pathologist's Novopath work list for corrections.
And then what? Does it just appear ready to go?
Not quite. It enters another manual loop. The OPS histotech leads. So histology supervisors have to look at this SOP work list and manually assign the case. They physically type the pathologist's name into the assigned to field right there on the results screen.
Really is like that digital corkboard analogy you used. Someone's manually moving the virtual file.
It's a perfect analogy. And once it's assigned, guess what the pathologist has to do?
Let me guess. Navigate somewhere and click a beaker and a shield.
You got it. Navigate to the test screen, probably scroll right again, click the beaker icon, click the shield icon, just to verify the order for the correction itself. It's the same manual confirmation dance as the SSP. The system insists on it, even for administrative corrections.
Okay, but the core of a correction is the actual change, right? The clinical substance.
Yeah.
Where does that happen?
That brings us to the most critical step, the one with real clinical and, frankly, legal weight. It's step 9 in the SOP. Here, the pathologist has to make a definitive choice. Is this an addendum or an amendment?
Addendum versus amendment. What's the difference according to the system's rules?
This is where the system forces the pathologist to categorize the severity of their own correction. An addendum is for the minor stuff. No fundamental disagreement with the original report, or maybe just a tiny disagreement with 0 clinical impact. Think typos, slightly better phrasing, clarifications. Low stakes.
Okay, makes sense. So an amendment must be.
An amendment is the big one. It's used when there's a significant disagreement, a change that actually alters the diagnosis, the cancer staging, maybe the interpretation of whether something is benign or malignant, anything that could materially affect how the patient is treated.
Wow, so the pathologist has to make that judgment call right there in the software. And if they get it wrong, say, label a major diagnostic change as just an addendum.
That's a huge problem. They could potentially obscure a critical clinical finding or change in thinking. The system puts that burden squarely on the pathologist. They make the choice, write the corrected text, do the shield clicks again for the addendum amendment itself, and then hit release.
So much administrative overhead just to update some text, but I guess it enforces a rigorous process.
It absolutely does. It ensures every correction, especially the significant ones, follows this documented path with clear responsibility and verification points. But it's built on layers of manual steps.
Okay, so Section 1 really paints a picture. Even basic tasks are these complex manual journeys full of clicks and specific rules, which leads to the big question, why? Why all these steps? Why the beakers and shields? Let's get into the architecture now. Let's tear this down and see why the system forces all this manual effort.
Right. Building directly on that procedural complexity, the technical analysis really gets to the root cause. It identifies these systemic issues, these structural inefficiencies, and that's what earns the system those D grades in critical areas like workflow efficiency and system integration.
D grades. Yeah. And the core problem identified in the analysis is...
The core issue, really the elephant in the room, is what the analysis calls the fragmented multi-application workflow.
Fragmented.
Meaning, to get through just one single pathology case, the user isn't working in one program. They are constantly switching between juggling 4 separate applications.
For one case. What are they?
You've got Novopath itself, the main reporting system. Then you need NanoZoomer, or NDP.View2, that's the software for actually viewing the digital microscope slides. Then there's Dragon for voice dictation.
Okay, 3. What's the 4th?
The 4th is an external tool called regex Download Organizer. It handles some automation tasks that, frankly, Novopath probably should handle itself.
4 separate apps. That's
Yeah.
not just multiple windows. That's like 4 different digital worlds you have to live in simultaneously.
Exactly. And the analysis stresses this point. Each one has its own login, potentially. Each one has its own window layout preferences that don't save properly. Each one has its own separate settings menu.
Wait, the layouts don't save.
Nope.
So the daily routine for a pathologist involves manually repositioning all 4 of those key windows: the main resulting screen from Novopath, the TRF or requisition form view, the slide viewer, and the report preview window every single day, sometimes multiple times a day if things get glitchy.
You're telling me a physician whose focus should be on diagnosing disease starts their day by playing virtual interior decorator, dragging windows around.
That's precisely what the analysis describes. Manual window management. Think about the cumulative time waste.
Oh, absolutely. If you do that for, say, 20 cases a day, even if it only takes a minute or 2 each time, that adds up fast. That's significant time not looking at slides.
It's huge cognitive tax. The analysis uses the analogy. Imagine trying to write one email using 4 separate computers on your desk. You're constantly switching contexts, managing the tools instead of doing the work.
And it's not just wasted time, is it? There's a risk factor there, too.
A big one. When you're busy dragging a window back into place, your attention is off the actual clinical data. The potential for misclicks, for maybe looking at the wrong patient's slide viewer for a second, or attaching something to the wrong case because you're mid-juggle. It goes up dramatically.
Yeah, I can see that. What's the recommended fix for this fragmentation?
It's pretty fundamental. They recommend deploying some kind of integrated launcher or a unified dashboard, something that uses modern session management, so one login gets you into everything. And crucially, it remembers your window layout from session to session.
Seems obvious, really. Until then, pathologists are stuck with this daily setup routine.
They are. Okay, speaking of manual effort, let's talk about how users handle image snippets. Taking a picture of a key part of the slide to include in the report. The analysis calls this the manual snippet handling nightmare.
Nightmare. That sounds promising. How bad is it?
Well, it's definitely not integrated. It's painfully manual and relies on the local computer's file system, which is generally not ideal for secure professional applications.
Okay, walk me through it. How do you get a snippet into the report?
First, you capture the image using the viewer tool, NanoZoomer or whatever, standard enough. But then you have to explicitly save that image file somewhere locally on your computer, like your desktop or maybe a temp folder you've created.
So it's not saving directly to the patient record or the case?
Not at all. Step 3, you then have to navigate using Windows Explorer or Finder to find that file you just saved. Step 4, you go back into Novopath and use its attach function to upload the image file you just located.
Capture, save locally, navigate, find, attach. That's clunky. It should just be capture to report, right?
Ideally, yes,
Yeah.
a single click. But here, it's a multi-step detour outside the main application. And it gets worse.
Oh.
The system doesn't even clean up after itself. Remember that fourth application, regex download organizer?
Yeah, the external tool. What does it do here?
Its job includes purging these temporary snippet image files from the user's local hard drive. It's done via Windows Task Scheduler, triggered by this regex tool.
Wait. Novopath requires users to save files locally, but it can't manage or delete those files itself. It needs an external program and the operating system scheduler to act as a janitor.
That's exactly the workflow described. File management, which should be a core function of any app using local temp files, is completely externalized. It adds another piece of software to maintain, another potential point of failure, another thing for IT to worry about.
The impact seems clear. It slows down reporting, forces users, or this external tool, to micromanage temp files, and you run the risk of losing snippets or having duplicates if that scheduler messes up.
Absolutely. And the proposed fix is, again, pretty straightforward. Build a direct capture to report button right into the slide viewer. It captures the image and directly associates it with the case in the database, totally bypassing the need to save locally. That one change could eliminate so much hassle.
Seems like a no-brainer. Okay, moving from workflow issues to deeper architectural problems. What about this delayed signature updates issue mentioned in the analysis? That sounded really odd.
Yeah, this one is quite revealing about the underlying database design. According to the source, when a user changes something in their signature field, like they get a new certification, update their title, whatever, the entire Novopath system slows down significantly.
Why?
Because, and I quote the analysis here, it updates every report ever written.
You're kidding. Every report. So if a pathologist has signed off on, I don't know, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of reports over the years, changing their title triggers an update on all of them.
That's what the analysis indicates. It suggests that instead of having a single profile for each pathologist that reports dynamically linked to when displayed,
The modern way. Yeah.
right, instead it seems the system actually embedded the literal text of the signature into each individual report record at the time it was signed.
Oh, wow. That's incredibly inefficient. Like fundamentally flawed database design.
It really is. Think about it. You change your title in one place, and the system has to go back and individually modify potentially millions of historical records. It's like, instead of updating one central librarian card, you have to go find every single book that librarian ever checked out and manually change their name on the checkout slip inside each book.
That analogy makes it crystal clear. No wonder the system grinds to a halt. That single issue probably explains why the data design and performance category got that C grade.
It's a huge factor. It's a classic example of technical debt having real-world performance consequences, and it hits during simple administrative changes.
Okay, what else contributes to the architectural problems? The analysis mentions browser and plugin reliance.
Yes, browser and plugin dependence. This is another sign of, let's say, older web architecture approaches. Core functions in Novopath, things like the dictation integration with Dragon, some of the download automation, image export, they don't work natively. They rely heavily on specific browser extensions or plugins.
Like ActiveX controls from back in the day, or specific Chrome extensions.
Exactly that kind of thing. And the problem is these plugins need manual configuration, and the setup can be different between the approved browsers, like Chrome versus Edge.
Which means updates are a nightmare.
Total nightmare. A browser update, like Chrome tightening security, can suddenly break a critical plugin and boom, your workflow is down. It leads to version mismatches across users. IT spends ages just trying to keep everyone on a compatible, fragile setup instead of improving things.
So IT's constantly fighting fires caused by external dependencies.
Pretty much. The recommendation here is also foundational. Move towards a more modern web application design or even a standalone client that has native support for these functions. Use standard APIs like the Web Speech API for dictation instead of relying on these brittle external plugins.
Makes sense. Remove the external points of failure.
Yeah.
Only long point in this section. Recall delay and release risks. This sounds important. How does Novopath handle recalling a report after it's been sent?
This is a potential compliance headache. The system allows pathologists to recall a report within a certain time window after release, if they spot an error or want to reconsider. But the length of that recall window isn't set globally by policy.
It isn't. Who sets it?
Each user sets their own preferred delay period in their individual settings.
Wait, really? So Dr. Adams could have a 30-minute recall window, but Dr. Baker next door could have only 10 minutes for the same types of cases.
That's exactly the scenario the analysis points out. There's no enforced standardization of this critical review period. Plus, there's a Release Now button that acts as an override, letting users bypass even their own set delay period.
That seems risky. You could have wildly inconsistent practices within the same group. Someone might accidentally release a report prematurely before a standard review could happen.
Precisely. The impact is inconsistent policy application, a real risk of reports getting finalized too soon, and potential compliance issues depending on lab or hospital regulations about review times.
What's the fix? It sounds less technical, more policy.
It is. The recommendation is to centralize the control. Have an administrator set a mandatory system-enforced recall delay based on official policy. Take that setting away from the individual user. And maybe restrict or log the use of that release now, override more carefully.
Okay, so we've covered the procedural maze and the shaky architecture. Now let's talk about the functional gaps, the places where the system just plain fails to connect the dots, forcing users into repetitive, frustrating tasks.
Right. And a lot of this stems directly from that four-application fragmentation we discussed. The big umbrella issue here is poor cross-module state awareness.
Meaning the different parts of the system don't know what the other parts are doing.
Exactly. They're like ships passing in the night. When you say open case ID 12345 in the main Novopath report editor, the slide viewer window doesn't automatically load the slides for 12345. The window showing the scanned requisition form doesn't automatically pull up the form for 12345. The preview pane doesn't sync either.
Oh, come on. So the pathologist has to manually enter or select the same case ID in 3 or 4 different places every single time they switch cases.
That's the reality described. Or they're constantly clicking refresh buttons in each window, hoping it picks up the context. The source material actually includes user notes like, if stuck on click thumb, right-click refresh.
That phrase, if stuck, tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it? The user is basically acting as the human middleware, forcing these separate apps to look at the same data.
They are the synchronization agent. The recommendation is pretty standard tech. Use shared session variables, maybe an event bus architecture, so that when the case context changes in one module, all the other relevant modules get notified and update automatically. It's not rocket science, but it's missing here.
And this lack of awareness likely leads to other big time wasters. The analysis flags the lack of slide viewer batch control as a major one.
Oh, this is critical, especially for surgical pathology where you might have many slides from a single complex case, like a big resection. The system, according to the source, has a fundamental limitation. You cannot open all slides simultaneously currently.
You can't. So if a case has, say, 10 blocks, meaning 10 slides, how does the pathologist view them?
1. At A time, they have to manually click to load slide 1, review it, close it, or navigate away, then manually click to load slide 2, review it, close it, and so on 10 times.
That's incredibly tedious and slow. Think about the cumulative clicking and waiting time just to get through the images for one complex case.
It's a huge drag on efficiency. If it takes, say, 20 minutes to review those 10 slides diagnostically, maybe another 5 or 10 minutes is spent just clicking next, waiting for load, clicking next again. That's a significant percentage of time wasted on pure interface friction.
Plus the repetitive strain, clicking over and over. What's the obvious fix here?
Industry standard stuff, really. Allow multi-slide loading within a single case view, maybe tabs, maybe a grid layout, and ideally implement prefetch caching, where the system intelligently starts loading slide 3 in the background while you're looking at slide 2. That alone would be a massive time saver.
Seems essential for a modern pathology system. Okay, moving from the slides to managing the workload itself, the analysis points to a lack of structure in case management. What did that mean in practice?
It primarily refers to the work list, the pathologist's main dashboard of pending cases. The big complaint is that sorting and filtering options on these work lists are not persistent.
They don't save.
Nope. You have to resort and refilter your list every single day, or maybe even every time you refresh it. There are no saved custom views, no presets like, show me my stat cases first, then routine cases sorted by age. You can't create dynamic smart filters like cases assigned to me requiring immunohistochemistry.
So every morning, the pathologist has to manually organize their entire digital pile of work from scratch.
That's the picture painted. The system presents the data, but it puts the entire burden of organizing it, prioritizing it, slicing and dicing it onto the user every single time. It's passive, not proactive in helping manage the workload.
That lack of structure must also affect collaboration, right? Like getting a second opinion.
Absolutely. The analysis calls out the limited assist workflow. When one pathologist needs help from a colleague on a case, the process is apparently very manual. Making the request, tracking comments, sending replies. It seems to happen across separate case entries or maybe even outside the system using email or chat.
Is there any built-in system for this?
The source docs mention something called a reservation system pending.
Pending. That suggests it's a known gap. Maybe a feature that was started but never finished or fully rolled out.
That's often what pending means in these contexts, yeah. The current workflow seems to rely on manual tracking and communication. A proper diagnostic platform really needs an integrated, structured way to handle consults or assists clear statuses like requested, accepted, in review, completed, with automated notifications, not just relying on sticky notes and emails.
Yeah, this next one seems particularly concerning for a system that handles corrections and amended reports. The absence of report version control.
Yes, this is a big one from a safety and audit trail perspective. The system does have something called a case audit feature, which lets you see historical versions of a report.
So you can see the old report and the new one.
You can see them, yes. But according to the analysis, it crucially lacks the ability to show you a comparison that highlights exactly what changed between version 1 and version 2.
No difference highlighting. So if a diagnosis was changed from, say, benign to malignant or stage I cancer to stage 3, you can't just see the specific words that were altered.
Apparently not easily. You'd have to pull up both full text reports side by side and manually visually compare them line by line to find the changes.
Wow. For tracking critical clinical revisions, that seems inadequate.
Yeah.
And potentially risky if you miss something in the manual comparison.
It really does. A simple version comparison tool that highlights additions, deletions, changes, that's not a luxury feature in a system like this. It's fundamental for transparency and accurate auditing, especially when dealing with amendments that have significant patient care implications.
Definitely. Okay, finally in this section, let's touch on the general error handling and instability. We already heard about the refresh if stuck advice.
Right. That phrase itself is a huge red flag about underlying stability. It tells you that users routinely encounter states where the application just hangs or gets confused, and the official advice is basically turn it off and on again at the session level.
What's the ultimate symptom of this instability, according to the analysis?
It seems to be the poor handling of concurrent sessions. The source notes that if you are logged into Novopath, say, at your office computer, and then you try to log in again from home or another location using the same credentials.
What happens? Does it warn you?
Nope. It apparently just kicks your original session out, unceremoniously disconnected, potentially losing any unsaved work in that first session.
Oh, that's bad. Modern systems usually handle that much more gracefully.
Absolutely. You'd expect proper session management using tokens, maybe a warning like, you're already logged in elsewhere, continue here and log out the other session. Perhaps auto-reconnect logic if there's a brief network blip. But just getting booted with no warning, that suggests the session handling is pretty rudimentary. The reliance on refresh if stuck is the user manually compensating for the application's inability to maintain its own state reliably.
All right, we've thoroughly diagnosed the system's problems. The complex procedures, the fragmented architecture, the functional gaps. Now we get to the really fascinating part. The official workarounds. How are the actual users, the pathologists and lab staff, instructed to cope with these flaws?
This is where the documentation becomes a survival guide. It explicitly tells people how to navigate the system's quirks and limitations to get the job done. Let's start with how they're supposed to ask for help now, using the discrepancy protocol for lab QAC issues.
Okay, the quality assurance team. The old way was just email, right? What's the new way?
The new process involves clicking a specific plus lave button on something called the discrepancy card, apparently on the right side of the screen. Seems straightforward enough initially.
But I sense a but coming.
Oh, yes. The critical step is categorization. A drop-down menu appears, and the user must select APN name or problems. The instructions are very explicit. Do not select BXP robe, that's not for us.
Wait, why would BXPRB, which sounds like biopsy problem, be an option if it's the wrong one? Why present a confusing, seemingly relevant, but incorrect choice?
That points to poor UI design or maybe confusing internal routing logic. Selecting the wrong category could send the help request into a black hole, or to the wrong team entirely. The user has to memorize the correct internal code, essentially, overriding the potentially misleading label. They need to know the system's internal map because the UI doesn't guide them properly.
So you file the discrepancy under the magic code name.
Yeah.
Then what? How does it get resolved?
It's this very manual three-stage handshake. First, the team that found the problem adds the discrepancy, using the right category. Second, Lab QAC investigates, and if they fix it, they mark the status as resolved, but it's not over. Third, the original team that reported it has to go back, check the fix, and then manually mark it as closed to confirm they agree it's resolved.
A three-way confirmation. What if the original team doesn't think it's fixed?
Then they have to manually unclick the resolved status, which flags it back to Lab QAC. And then they're advised to send a follow-up email explaining why it's not fixed. So even the resolution process involves manual state changes and falling back to external communication.
Okay, let's move to managing the work lists again, specifically involving that beaker icon. What are the rules there?
So there are these main work lists, NAAP pending cases and NAAP add-ons. Add-ons are sort of the holding area for tests added after the initial case setup.
Right.
And the movement of cases, especially getting those add-ons processed, seems heavily dependent on the state of that beaker icon. We talked about clicking it to verify orders.
Yeah.
But here's a really specific, counterintuitive rule for retrieving older add-ons, say, from before a certain date like October 28th mentioned in the source. To get the lab's attention on these older items, the pathologist is instructed to manually unclick the beaker icon.
Unclick it. So clicking it means verified or acknowledged, but unclicking it for old stuff means, hey, lab, please look at this.
That's exactly the function it serves in this specific context, according to the rules. It turns the beaker from a status indicator into a manual override flag, a way to bypass the normal queue logic for aged cases. It's basically an admission that the standard workflow isn't good enough to ensure older, perhaps forgotten, add-ons get processed promptly.
So the user has to remember this special unclick rule just for older items.
Yeah.
Fascinating. What about other specific ordering rules? Any other weird ones?
Oh, yeah. The system seems to struggle with basic quantities and routing. For example, if a pathologist needs 3 recuts of a tissue block.
Yeah. Can they just order recut quantity 3?
Nope. The source explicitly states they must order the recut test 3 separate times. They have to add the same test order 3 times to the case.
You're kidding. 3 distinct orders for the same thing. That's redundant.
And prone to errors, surely.
Hugely. Instead of a simple quantity field, it forces 3 transactions, multiplying the clicks and the chance of mistakes. And they have to remember to put any necessary comments in the remarks field for each of those 3 separate orders. Wow. Okay. What else?
Similar weirdness with ordering a regross, re-examining the original tissue specimen. Pathologists are told to only select 1 block in the order, even if multiple blocks were part of the original case, because apparently selecting more than 1 confuses the downstream lab process.
Select 1, even if you mean all of them.
Seems to be the workaround. And related to remarks, they must be placed in the specific test field they relate to. If you put a remark about a special stain in the main H&E, hematoxylin, and eosin stains section, the special stains team might never see it. The system can't route the information correctly based on context.
So the user has to know exactly which digital box corresponds to which lab team or process. The system doesn't handle that routing intelligently.
Not according to these rules. It forces the user to adopt these very specific, sometimes illogical behaviors just to make sure the right information gets to the right place.
Okay, now for what sounds like the highest stakes workaround, the critical test code fix. What happens when a test code is missing?
This sounds like a potential showstopper. The sources describe a scenario where a required test code is missing from either the main report area or the requisition area, maybe due to an upstream data issue.
And the consequences?
Catastrophic, potentially. Antrim, that central hub system, sees the missing code and automatically blocks the report. It won't transmit it to the client systems, like their EMR or PIMS. The final diagnostic report basically hits a wall and never reaches the clinician who ordered it.
Yikes. Okay, that's bad. How do they fix it? It can't be simple.
It's described as an emergency correction procedure. It's quite convoluted. First, the user has to initiate a formal correction action on the case.
Okay.
Then, within that correction area, they have to manually type in the correct test code that was missing.
Manually add the missing data point. Makes sense.
Then they have to cut and paste the entire original report text into that same correction area.
Copy the whole report over.
What? Presumably to ensure the report text is associated with the now present text code within the correction record. It's replacing the block report with a corrected version. Then they have to click the green shield icon next to the correction area itself to verify the specific fix. And finally, they hit F2.
Ah, the mighty F2 key. It comes up again. It sounds like this key is incredibly important in Novopath.
It seems to be the make it happen button, yeah. Let's contrast how you release a partial report versus a final one to really see the power of F2.
Okay. How do you release a partial or preliminary report?
That's a careful multi-step process. Step 1, enter the partial report text. Step 2, manually click the red shield icon next to just that report field to turn it green, verifying only that part. Step 3, click the Save E button. Step 4, click the Release button.
Enter text, click Shield, click Save, click Release. 4 distinct steps. Very deliberate.
Very deliberate, yeah. Designed to limit scope. Now, how do you release the final report after all the stains are back, everything's done?
Yeah.
You just hit F2.
That's it. Just F2. What does it do?
According to the source, hitting F2 does 3 things all at once. It saves the entire report. It verifies all the fields, the main report, any addenda, all the recuts, all the special stains, everything with a shield icon potentially. And it releases the final report to Antrim.
Whoa. So F2 is like a master override key. It bypasses the need to individually click every single green shield for every single test and comment on the case.
That seems to be exactly its function. It's a massive shortcut that essentially tells the system, look, I know there are 50 things here that technically need verification, but trust me, they're all okay. Just save, verify everything globally, and send it out, and now W.
That is incredibly telling. The existence and prominence of a key like F2 strongly suggests that the standard click every shield verification process is just too slow and cumbersome for regular use in a busy lab. F2 is the escape hatch.
It's the ultimate workaround, baked right into the keyboard shortcuts. A powerful but potentially risky way to overcome the system's own built-in complexity.
Okay, we've seen the internal struggles. Let's pivot now to things outside the user's direct control, but that still cause massive headaches. System bugs, IT policies, external factors. These are the hidden traps.
Right, and some of these can directly impact patient care timelines. The problem described as invisible cases is genuinely alarming.
Invisible. How can a case be invisible? Does it just disappear?
Not disappear entirely, but it becomes invisible on the pathologist's main work list. The source describes a specific, nasty bug. Novopath's work list filtering logic apparently doesn't correctly recognize or parse certain combinations of 4-letter prefixes used in accession numbers.
Accession numbers being the unique ID for each case, right? So if a case has one of these unlucky prefixes.
It simply doesn't show up on the pathologist's list of assigned cases, even though it's assigned to them in the database. The filter fails to find it.
Oh, that's bad. A case could just sit there, unworked, potentially for days, because the software is literally hiding it from the person assigned to it. That's a major patient safety issue.
It's a critical risk for delays. And the workaround to find these invisible cases is incredibly convoluted. You can't just type the accession number into the standard lookup case search bar.
Why not, if you know the number?
Because that search function also apparently fails if the prefix is one of the problematic ones. The bug affects basic retrieval too.
Okay, this is getting ridiculous. So if the direct search fails, how on earth do you find an invisible case you know exists?
Get ready for this multi-step hunt. First, you click the white lookup case button, but you don't enter the accession number. Second, you enter your own name into the pathologist field. Third, you select No in the signed off field to filter for only open cases.
Okay, so you're setting up to see all your own open cases.
Fourth, you hit search. This brings up potentially a huge list, every case currently assigned to you that isn't finalized. Fifth, you then have to find the column for date reported and manually click to sort it by descending order.
Why sort by date?
Presumably to bring the most recent cases, which might include the missing one, to the top. And then you just visually scan through that entire list, potentially hundreds of cases, looking for the accession number you know is missing.
You have to manually browse your entire workload, hoping to spot the one the system couldn't find directly. That is absurd.
It's the user manually performing the database query because the built-in query logic is broken for certain inputs. They're acting as the human search index. It's a stark example of how a seemingly small bug in filtering or input validation can necessitate incredibly inefficient manual labor.
That kind of workaround just bleeds time out of the day. Okay, let's talk about when things go wrong more broadly. Outages, downtime. What's the policy on IT responsibility and NP time? NP time being compensation for lost work time.
Yeah, this adds a layer of bureaucratic complexity right when things are broken. The policy, as described, is quite strict about whose fault an outage is.
What do you mean?
Compensation, or NP time, is apparently only granted for problems that Antech IT is deemed responsible for fixing.
And what's not covered?
The policy explicitly excludes things outside Antech's direct control. So if your local internet goes out or there's a power outage in your area, no NT time. Crucially, it also excludes downtime caused by the Novopath vendor themselves.
So if Novopath, company that makes the software, has a server issue or pushes a bad update that breaks things, that doesn't count.
Not for NP time compensation, according to the examples given. The source mentions a recent issue caused by a Chrome browser update conflicting with a VPN, and another time when the WSI image servers, likely run by the scanner vendor or Novopath, went down. In both cases, because the root cause was attributed to an external vendor or factor, not Antech's internal IT infrastructure, NP time was denied.
Wow. So during an outage, the pathologist not only can't work, but they also have to figure out why it's down to know if they'll be compensated for the lost time. These would be troubleshooters and policy analysts.
It definitely adds stress during an already stressful situation. Whose fault is it? Does it fit the criteria? It shifts focus from just getting back online.
Are there any official tips given to help mitigate these outages, given the complex dependencies?
Yes, there are some practical mitigation tips. The main one echoes the plugin discussion. Remember that Novopath supposedly works on multiple web browsers, Chrome, Firefox, Microsoft Edge.
So the advice is try turning it off and on again, but with browsers.
Pretty much. If Novopath stops working in Chrome, try opening it in Edge or Firefox. Sometimes the issue might be specific to one browser's rendering engine, a recent update, or a plugin conflict. Switching browsers can occasionally be a quick fix or workaround while IT investigates the root cause. It's basic troubleshooting, but essential when the platform is sensitive to browser environments.
Okay, and given all this complexity, the bugs, the workarounds, how does critical information actually get shared among the users if there's a new bug or a vital workaround discovered?
It seems a lot of that essential time-sensitive communication happens outside of Novopath altogether, primarily in Teams chat for actionable feedback.
Using Microsoft Teams, basically.
Yeah. It becomes the de facto channel for rapid communication about system issues and solutions. But, as the source notes, chat is ephemeral. Important information gets buried quickly in the stream.
So how do they manage that?
They try to enforce some discipline. Users are encouraged to use specific keywords like nota bene, Latin for note well, in important messages, so others can find them later using Credol plus F search within Teams.
Using search keywords in chat. Okay.
And even more importantly, they rely on pinning critical messages or announcements to the top of the chat channel.
So they're essentially building a crowdsourced, manually curated knowledge base and alert system within a chat application because the main software itself is too unreliable or lacks the features for this.
That's a perfect description. It's organizational communication plugging the gaps left by the software's failures. And the guidance is strict. Feedback needs to be actionable. Include case numbers, include screenshots, describe the exact steps, no vague complaints, help IT reproduce the problem. This whole external structure in Teams exists because Novopath itself isn't facilitating this kind of critical, contextual information flow effectively. #tagoutro.
Wow. Okay, this has been an incredibly detailed journey through the inner workings and failings of the Novopath system. We started with those very specific, almost ritualistic procedures like the 7 clicks just to order a stain. And we ended up dissecting emergency workarounds, like that 6-step hunt for cases the system itself made invisible.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it? And our analysis, drawing from these sources, lands squarely on that overall C grade. The system isn't completely broken, and its procedural documentation, the SOPs themselves, are actually quite detailed. We rated that aspect a B+. The staff clearly know the complex steps they need to take.
But that procedural knowledge is basically a coping mechanism.
Exactly. It's undermined by fundamental architectural weaknesses. Workflow efficiency scored a D. System integration scored a D. The platform functions, but it's hobbled by that fragmented design, the 4 separate apps, the reliance on manual clicks, the outdated database choices like those embedded signatures.
Yeah, the signature thing was mind-boggling.
And the heavy dependency on browser plugins and external tools like Regex.
So this deep dive really revealed a system that forces its users, highly trained pathologists, techs, support staff to become absolute masters of navigating fragile workarounds, juggling external tools, and constantly performing manual state management. clicking beakers, clicking shields, hitting refresh.
They're constantly managing the system's state because the system can't manage it itself reliably.
And it just starkly illustrates the cognitive cost, doesn't it? The mental energy spent fighting the software when using professional tools that lack modern integration, batch processing, and automated sync.
It's a huge, often unmeasured cost.
We spent a lot of time talking about things like the F2 key, the specific meanings of the beaker icon in different contexts, the mandatory clicks on red or green shields. These aren't just interface elements. They feel like physical manifestations of the system's built-in friction and technical debt.
They are symbols of the user having to take on the role of the software's own error checking and state validation logic.
Which leads us to the final thought for you, the listener. In an era where clinical speed, accuracy, and efficiency are paramount, how much of this kind of technical debt, this fragmented design, can a critical diagnostic system realistically carry? When does the cumulative friction from all these workarounds and manual steps start to genuinely impact the core diagnostic process itself?
Yeah, put simply, what percentage of a pathologist's day, their incredibly valuable expertise, is spent battling the software, trying to get the right window open, the right test code entered, the right image loaded, versus the percentage spent actually analyzing the disease and making the life-altering diagnosis? That hidden time sink, that constant low-level friction, that's the real price being paid every day for using a C-grade system in a field that demands nothing less than A-plus performance.